Alright everyone, now we can talk about immigration, because again, it's like, what else is anyone talking about? I could make like the most interesting video ever, and if it doesn't involve pictures of crying Mexican orphans, I guess it just won't get any traction, like 2 people will watch it or something. It's almost surreal, but it's temporary, but it's like, you know, after like Sandy Hook or something. What else was anyone talking about? Trump is pushing back on immigration. Right now his critics, who always think that he's Hitler anywhere, basically they're comparing the situation to Nazi Germany. They're talking about, you know, the concentration camps and how we're treating little kids like criminals and they're crying, and there's the ProPublica audio, which is, you know, very sad and very cherry-picked, very obviously, that he's pushing back, and he's invoked the European migrant crisis. And you've heard, if you pay attention to like Sessions and some of these others, they're trying to make a differentiation, and they are correct when they do this, it's not wrong, a difference between economic migrants and legitimate asylum seekers. Now that's not all, but you've got to understand, when we're talking about people who have entered the United States illegally, the vast majority of them are not legitimately seeking asylum. It's like when Sessions said, well, you know, we're dropping domestic violence as a marker which is acceptable to seek asylum under. You know, mainly it's going to be kind of difficult to prove that in some cases, by the way. I think that might be the problem. If you're fleeing warfare, you're fleeing some sort of political persecution or something, you're at hazard of losing your life because of the actions of a state or maybe a cartel or something. You can seek asylum, and it's not illegal to come here to seek asylum. It's just you have to go back if you, obviously, if you've been found not to qualify. Instead, most of the people who are illegally in the United States did not seek asylum, filed no paperwork for asylum, they simply entered the country. In many cases, they had a visa initially and it was perfectly above board and legal and they just overstayed. This is the case with most illegal immigrants from Europe. They came here on a tourist visa, like, oh yeah, I'm going to visit the US, and I'm going to go see the Statue of Liberty, fuck off. You know, don't tread on me. And then they simply disappear into the crowd. And by the way, when you see like the propaganda images of children there, they're always showing you children from like Guatemala and stuff. When are they talking about Eastern European illegal immigrants? There's like 500,000 in this country. You do realize that? Many of which are on the Eastern Seaboard, especially New York City, Boston, places like that. You don't hear anything about it because the left is trying to produce a propagandist world image in which everyone believes that it boils down, if you're enforcing immigration law, it boils down to race. I saw people saying, well, this is just pure racism on Trump's part. Immigrant isn't a race. Immigrants can come from anywhere. They can be African, they can be from Latin America, they can be from Australia, someone from England can come over. Immigrant is just a status, a classification. It has nothing to do with biology. As far as I knew, you weren't born an immigrant. I don't think that you become one because of your genetics. Like, oh yeah, I have the immigrant gene, so it means that I'm going to be biologically compelled to jump the border into someone else's country and stay there without permission. That's not the way that the world actually works, but there are people who seem to think so. They don't even realize. It's like they think that everyone being detained is like Mexican. It's like, have you ever heard of Honduras or Guatemala or El Salvador? Have you heard of Venezuela or Colombia or Brazil? Yeah, there are other places. What about Cuba? Haiti? There are other places that people illegally immigrate from on a common basis. Poland. Eastern and parts of Eastern Europe are extremely heavy on lending illegal immigration to the United States. Poland and Hungary especially, I believe. There's a fairly large number of people, some tens of thousands from these nations that overstayed visas. They're illegally in the country, and when we say illegal, it's like, oh, no human is illegal. Now, yes, they can be. They can be based on where they are and the will of the public within that host state. If the host state doesn't care, you know, if it's Sweden, technically there is no such classification. The government's not enforcing any form of immigration policy anyway. It doesn't care. Here, generally, we try to enforce it, or most presidents do. Obama didn't for the most part because it was politically inconvenient. And I'll tell you what, another thing people need to understand is that this was already a problem in the Obama admin and in the Bush administration. It was already a problem. There were already detention facilities set up. There were already cases of children being split from their parents. It was already happening. There were already ICE abuses. There were already attacks on the border. There were already problems. live fire at some point. At some point, I remember, I think it was around 2007. It's definitely the Obama years. There was like a Mexican kid throwing rocks at some agents near the border, and they shot him. And it was a big incident. I can remember, I think there was at some point, I think I recall around 2016 or something, there was a Mexican helicopter that opened fire on our side of the border or something. And I think they returned fire and brought it down, if I remember. Some crazy shit like that went on. And it's nuts. Yes, the border is not, necessarily the safest place in the world. He's invoking Europe, though, and it's good. It behooves us to look at Europe and see what happens when you have an open border situation. And you also have another similarity in which it's a patchwork. Look, most states go along with Trump, and they're attempting to enforce, the law. Then there's California or Illinois. Or here in Vermont. There are some states that aren't enforcing the law. They're like, nope, we're not going to do it. We're not going to cooperate. Whereas we're Confederates now, we're states' writers, and oddly enough, they're all blue states for the most part. We're not going to enforce the law. It's like the governor of Massachusetts just said he's not sending troops to the border, and I'm like, what national border does Massachusetts have that's not technically like the maritime border? Like, oh, okay, I'm not going to put these ships out at sea to enforce immigration laws. It's like, the next time that a boat comes over from Ireland and tries to drop people off in Boston Harbor, we won't stop it. What are you talking about, dude? Why the fuck should Massachusetts have to deploy troops to the border? You're not Texas. Nobody cares. It's none of your business, really. It's like Vermont. It's like, oh, I'm not going to deploy those 10 dudes on bicycles to the Canadian border, which means that we've now got a porous border and people are going to bring illicit syrup into Vermont markets and fuck our economy. Now, that would honestly be the biggest risk for a state like Vermont. I'm not even joking. Well, sort of joking, but it could be wrong. It could be bad. People end up flying up there and walking across instead of using the Burlington airport. Oh no, we lost jobs in Vermont. It'd be pretty funny. If you look at Europe, though, you've got a situation where the governments initially said, well, we're going to take in some refugees. Just a few people, they're fleeing war, we have to take them in. They then found out that it was, number one, 10 times as many people. Number two, most of them were not refugees under any legitimate international status. Most of them have nothing to do with the Syrian civil war, and if you look at that, the problem was caused by the U.S. anyway. Look, the U.S. also helps cause problems in Mexico. We drain away some of their best and brightest. We also drain away some of their migrant labor that could otherwise maybe add to the Mexican economy, keeping Mexico poor. Now, isn't that funny? It is rather inhumane to have an open border. You have a big economy. You have a lot of possibility for people if they can, get amnesty or conditional residency or something. If they can get some sort of legal status, it's like, they win the lottery. The problem is, because of the fact that we've had an open and largely unstaffed southern border, we have incentivized other people to come here. Now, Sessions and Trump want to focus on our side of that, situation. Basically, well, we're being taken advantage of, and they're draining resources. Okay, you're also draining the donor nation. I've spoken about this before. It's common within anthropology to bring this up as an interesting sort of ethical question. Does it not harm the donor culture as well, considering the skew on people who are likely to migrate? They're going to tend to be younger, or they're going to tend to be more skilled. They're either looking for a better job. They're like, yeah, I've got a degree in doctoring from the Guatemala State University. If I stay here, I'm making a little bit more than other impoverished people. I'm still subsisting on peanuts, basically. If I go to the U.S., if I can actually get legalized, shit, I can make $250,000 a year. I'll be driving a Porsche around pretty quickly. I'll be living in a house. I'll be living in a house bigger than the average, 10-family commie subdevelopment over here in Guatemala City. So they want to go to the United States or to some other, comparable nation. And it's not a surprise that they would want to come over. Or they're young individual, maybe not skilled. They're younger. They're willing to work. They're willing to do back-breaking labor. They can do that for 10 cents in Panama, or they can do it for $10 in the United States and send a few dollars back, and their family gets, 10 times as much food. It's like, oh yeah, I send back like, $2 a week. My family thinks that they're sitting pretty back in Sierra Leone. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here, I've got banana chips and bacon and stuff and all this good shit that I can't get in my home country. Why the hell wouldn't you want to immigrate to the United States? And some people on the left are pointing out something that I've actually said as well before, and I agree with them on this. I fundamentally agree. If you took stress off the legal immigrant situation, you wouldn't have so much of a situation with illegal immigration. Right now, we throttle the number of people that are able to migrate here legally. That means we're turning away some very skilled or very hardworking, perfectly law-abiding individuals. We're turning them away. Well, then if those people feel really compelled, they'll just walk across the border or overstay a tourist visa or whatever. Then they disappear, and it makes it a lot harder for the U.S. Look, we're expending a hell of a lot more money and resources than we would if we simply streamlined the legal immigrant process, do away with the visa lottery, expand the number that can be given out, increase the number of classifications for which you can get at least conditional residency. Yes, I would grant clemency to the immediate family, an immediate family only, by the way, no chain migration, children that are here, they're citizens because they were born on U.S. soil, or people who served in the U.S. Armed Forces, no criminal record, or no significant criminal record. I don't care. Minor drug possession. Okay, who fucking cares? You got a speeding ticket. That's not a reason to deport someone. You'd be deporting a lot of American citizens too. They're willing to pay the back taxes, so it's a zero-sum game. Yeah, let them stay. They're highly educated. Some valedictorian, illegally here, went to an American high school, an American college, probably speaks 5 friggin' languages. Yeah, I'm not going to kick them out. But then you've got some millions and millions of people who do need to be deported. And you can't simply say, well, they've got kids here, so you can't deport them. Okay, well then, I guess everyone who wants to be a criminal have kids and then use that argument. Oh, you can't send me to jail. You're depriving my kids of a father, of a mother. You can't do that. They're even more due that protection technically because they're actually citizens. You're talking about people who are not legally within the country. What would happen if you were to make this argument in almost any other nation in the world, you would be laughed at. You try illegally immigrating to like Afghanistan or Pakistan or something, say, oh no, but I've got kids here. I knocked somebody up, so you can't detain me. You can't deport me. You can't do anything to me. I got kids to feed. Leave me alone. It's astonishing that people want that kind of generosity here in the U.S. where we've got people here in the U.S. who aren't given that generosity. We have homeless people and huddled masses already. We don't have to. We could abandon centrality and go back to capitalism. We'd have a lot fewer of these problems, and private charities could easily take care of the rest, but people keep blaming capitalism for all their problems. It's the alt-left people. It's a bunch of people. They think that you're bigoted if you want to enforce existing laws or reform the laws and enforce them in the meantime before that. If you blame Democrats for obstructing for the last few decades on the issue, along with most Republicans, let's wash both hands here and be thorough. They'll call you a bigot, and yet they sit there and they assume that everyone in these detention facilities is number one. They're brown and Mexican, and it's like immigrant is a race. It's the same thing on like Islam. They're like, oh, you're just racist against Muslims. What race? It's a religion. What are you talking about? You don't even know what race and ethnicity are, and you want to call other people bigots. Crazy. That's about all. Peace out.